Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or meant to target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle or demean the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com. You can also send a direct message to me on Instagram at Mr. Clark After Dark. Hope you enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. And now, on to the show. Hope you all enjoy. Hello and welcome back to episode number 2 with Scott Barr. Scott Barr is currently the Director of Human Resources and Administration with the former McMurray Public School District and is currently in his 27th year in the profession. On part 2 of our conversation, Scott and I discussed standardized testing, how society undervalues teachers, how everyone thinks they can be a teacher through the quote-unquote institutional biography they develop throughout their own education, ways to make education more competitive in the age of the teacher shortage, the amount of time teachers put in and what the tipping point is potentially for the shortage, quiet quitting, and my own personal run-in with Scott as he was my own principal when I was in junior high, how teaching has changed throughout his career, and much more. Thank you all for tuning in and hope you enjoy the show.
Lights you up. My big thing and it's always been number one was, like I said, be the teacher you needed. Number 2 is spread the light. It's all about spreading the light. I mean, to people at the school here, you'll hear them say that. That's one of my mantras is, if you're not spreading the light, you need to. Like, whatever that is to you. It's not a religious connotation to that at all. It's just spread the light, like be positive and drop a note off on somebody's desk. Just these little things go so far. And I think that's so important that those things, and that comes from that belief system that I have that, you never.
So if you
know.
don't, how would you kind of characterize a belief system for yourself?
I'm definitely Buddhist.
Buddhist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I have since I was 18 or 19. Yes,
okay.
That's my.
So why the
faith.
calling to that? If you don't mind me asking,
100% through karate.
Okay.
100% through the way the part of the martial art that comes from.
Okay.
Right. So I certainly have gone my own route with that.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because the karate club I used to go to was in a church, and it was like very much churchy.
Okay. Yeah.
Which they would do a prayer and stuff like that. Not Buddhist prayer.
Yeah.
It was a Trinity church.
Yeah.
But I went very much that way and found my spirituality is what I like to say through that, and that has helped me tons, like just being present, and I'm happy that everyone's whatever they are. It doesn't matter to me at all, and it's just this is what gets me through the day. And
so do you have like a meditation kind of protocol or like a
no?
routine?
I just did my own reading and stuff like that I did through that to get to a point where I have some that I do when I'm going to sleep, like ones to relax your body. That's very common stuff. This is not deep level things like that, but. Being present is a big one. When you're washing dishes, too many people wander their brains. It sucks. Just wash the dishes. That's all you got to do at that moment. Just be there. So be in that moment.
Well, because I know with meditation, the number one thing is focus on your breath. So not try to
don't change your breath. That's a big thing. People try to focus on their breath, and then they're suddenly. No, it's not. Well,
it's breathe normally.
Yeah, breathe.
Focus on where it starts and where it ends. That's kind of the. I've been dabbling in it a little bit, I guess. But even brushing my teeth recently, I've noticed
driving
just focus on breathing.
Walking.
Old man walks.
It is. Yes.
But it's
Thich Nhat Hanh. Did tons of walking meditation.
So did you? Because I've always said, from my perspective so far, teaching it's not inherently extremely difficult. It's just a lot of work and a lot of time.
Yeah.
And how did you kind of keep yourself fresh? Was it I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what would you say is a tool that you use to be I need this to help me be better here?
Yeah, I think I really tried to stay in contact with what kids felt was what they were doing, and
So what do you mean by that?
So being around teenagers all the time for such a big part of my career lets you stay young. Like it
Yeah.
really does. I mean,
I know.
you're
I
always
say
in the mix of the
Riz,
TikTok.
Cap. All...
Yeah. You get exactly all that stuff is still,
Yeah.
bruh, all that kind of stuff you're still doing. Like, and it's funny, and the music, you're in tune with the music they're listening to if you choose. And
Yeah.
if you want to shut your brain to it, you can.
Yeah.
But I never did. I use those are the connectors. I never knew when I was with a kid who was having a meltdown, which in high school, junior high looks very different from a kindergarten, but it still happens just as much. And they shut down. You need a way to connect with that kid, whatever it might be. If it's Dragon Ball Z, if it's Pokemon, like it didn't matter. Like if there's something you animate, like whatever it was, you needed to be at least a little versed in that. Yeah. So Star Wars many times was a huge connector for me with kids. Yeah. Huge, because everyone loves some. Well, if they don't, I always told them go to a different school. If you don't like Star Wars, go to a different school. It didn't matter.
Well, even if you don't like it, you've probably watched it.
You've probably heard of it.
You can at least. Oh, you've definitely heard of it.
And I'd have Lego in my office, and then kids would play like whatever it took to connect.
So what do you think of the new Star Wars shows?
I like all of them. Like
okay,
I'm a nut for all of it. I love all of it. Andor was amazing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject there, but I've heard it was very over.
No, I loved all of them. Yeah, I just finished Ahsoka last week. It was very well done. I enjoyed it too. So yeah, I loved them all. So I'm a devourer of content. So I mean that's fine with me. I'm not a Disney hater. So so I think that helped keep me refreshed was that, and then being around a staff that was always trying to do the best for kids. Mm-hmm. That kept me okay. Now I got to keep going. Then if these people are out there doing it,
so you're kind of feeding off.
Yeah, you feed off the energy of those around you.
That kind of makes sense because you're trying to kind of manufacture that culture.
Yes.
So that everyone sees it as something to feed into, not that takes away.
Yes.
From their energy, I guess, or the willingness to put in more.
Yeah. And never forgetting who you are in the end, though.
Yeah.
Like you still have to always be yourself. Like I said at the start, I'm not going to pretend to be anybody I'm not. I'm just who I am. And I'll feed off all these other things. But in the end, if I'm trying to be somebody I'm not, you're going to see through that. Yeah. Especially teenagers. They see through you. If you're lying. They're going to eat that. They are not.
And that's another thing too, where I found I'm, again, year 1 to year 2, I'm much more comfortable this year just being myself.
Yeah.
And I find...
And that'll get better and better.
Everyone has this idea of themselves as what a teacher is.
Yeah.
So you're kind of striving to that image.
Well, you have one in your head because that's why you got into it. Some teacher was that to you.
Well, and the
or
way
wasn't. One or the other.
So you kind of envision a way that it's kind of supposed to be.
Correct.
But I find if that image of what it's supposed to be is not what you are, it's going to... You're not going to go down the right path, or you're going to hate it, or you're going to get burnt out, and that's just kind of what it's going to be.
Totally. And I think too, when you lose touch with that as to why you're here, anger, like you're going to get into the dark side of what teaching can be, and it's sad to see teachers who are like that, and there are many that are like that, and it's too bad because they at some point had a ton to offer, but they've just hooked onto that's what's keeping them going. If only this was better, if there was less kids, if there was more EAs. I 100% support every single one of those things, but we can't make that happen. Like our budgets are our budgets.
Yep.
And so we have to work with what we got. I mean, the parents aren't keeping the good kids at home. This is what they've got. They're sending us the best they've got. Yeah. The only ones. So they love that kid more than anything in the world, as they should. And when they don't, it's even more important for us to be there for them. So, the culture of the school is just so important to filling your own bucket as a teacher too. Like you feel like you want to be at school.
Well, it kind of goes back into like the family example where you're saying you find a way to make teaching what fills your bucket.
Yes.
Not something that takes away. So
correct.
But again, I find that's so easy to say, but then we're also literally in crisis mode. So what are some? So if
it's a fine line.
If you had that magic wand,
yeah.
Like what are some adjustments that you think could be made to kind of restore teaching to what it was? I don't want to speak like nostalgia can be a dangerous thing.
No, I wouldn't say that either because there was challenges during that time too. Yeah. So I think the funding model needs to be re-looked at. I don't think we're funding schools the way they should be. Yeah. This the rotating 3-year thing that the government's doing is.
So how would you change it, and like what changes would that make?
Well, I think if you were actually funding for the amount of students you have in your building, that would be one that would certainly help.
Yeah.
But that's number one. Number two, I think universities need to become a lot better at teaching, getting more teachers out and getting them doing more practicums prior to their teaching. Like I think University of Lethbridge does 3 full practicums. I don't know why every school doesn't do that. I think in your second year as a ed student, you should be out in a school. Do you really want to do this? Go find out.
Because for me, I found the 2-year subbing here, which was just a coincidence that I had a degree before, so the TS. Do you think that should be co-opted everywhere?
So that you can,
Like a university degree, or even if you're a current ed student, like let's just say I'm in Edmonton, you need a
Mhm.
university degree to sub as well. Like
actually, I
what?
don't think they're allowed to do that there, are they?
No.
I think it's a Northern Alberta thing, actually.
Yes,
It's a very
yeah,
unique
it's
thing for
all.
Fort
That's
McMurray.
what I mean. So when
Yeah.
I was in university, in my online courses, like, yeah, I just subbed all day.
Yeah.
They're like, what?
What are you talking
Like
about?
they
That's
had no
not legal.
idea.
Yeah, I know.
But
It's a
for
part-
me, it was if you're going from, let's say you're doing your after degree,
yeah.
you finish your first year, now you have May and June. Like, why can't you sub for those
Yeah.
2 months?
Yeah, like anything that would get people out to the buildings to learn more. Like I think that's so
Ye-
important, and I do think that the universities need to be a part of this puzzle. Like, I mean, why is it 80% average to get into education? Like, why isn't it 73?
The secondary, and I always say, I've said it a couple times, like it sounds like a weird flex, but like history, poli sci, my undergrad, and to get into secondary social, I think it was a 3.9
Like,
GPA.
Why? This is like,
And law was 3.66. I was
So-
like,
so
how
what-
does this happen?
What are we doing here? What are we
like,
doing
why?
here? What are we doing?
But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a shift there as well. I also think diploma exams need to go. I think
Yeah.
that if they're basically here so that universities can rank us and put us into universities they want. Well, then they should pay for it. Like, there's a reason there's SAT in
Pay
in the
for
US.
the exam?
Yeah, why wouldn't, like, if they
Like if
you
I
wanna
wanted to go
have
to
an
this
entrance
university,
exam,
you have like an
then you
admission
write-
exam.
Oh, what's the SAT in the States? It's the same thing. But you only choose to do that if you wish. You don't have to do that. Right? So why doesn't
Okay.
Canada have that? Why are we paying the money? How much money is spent by Alberta Education on those diploma exams that could go back to the classrooms?
Well, because I go down for marking and just
which is great
say-
PD.
Oh,
Some of the best PD you can have.
excellent. But I guess you could still do that and it not be mandatory. I guess, but
Sure, you could.
I don't know.
Anyways, I think that's a whole other tangent. But I mean,
yes,
those are some things I think, like the funding part, the universities need to pick up the pace. And I
Yeah.
think we need to somehow have society buy into the fact that teachers are important again. And right now we're in that polarized world, specifically since COVID, that has really driven people to either side.
Why do you think teachers were targeted? Or like why?
Like,
do you think we're
I think
targeted?
you hit the nail on the head when you said
Yeah.
everybody's been in school. Everybody thinks they can do it.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, do you think right now? Because I know there's a lot of is it politicking with the teacher salary things? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think is reasonable? Is it like what we're at now reasonable? Do you think like slightly more?
Listen, I remember
Like-
after teaching 2 years up here, no, remember this has been in the late 90s. I remember saying I would have been, if you told me I was making that kind of money after 2 years of teaching, I would have been laughing when I was in university.
Yeah.
Like, do I think that we deserve increases that match inflation? Yes.
Yeah.
Like, that seems ridiculous to me that we're not. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know any job that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think we have to check our privilege sometimes when we think about,
Yeah.
oh, we should be getting this much more and that much more.
Yeah.
We're, compared across the world,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable the amount of money we're
Yeah, 'cause
making.
it's like it's like 32,000 US is top 1% in the world, like total.
So
Which
there you
is,
go, right?
like-
I mean, I'm certainly not saying teachers are paid enough. They're not.
yeah,
They're not. By no means do I think that. But I think when you see the bigger picture now too, you realize there's a reason. There's only so much of a pile for the division to work with. Then that's
and
what it
again,
is.
in our context, it's very easy to compare yourself to a person who's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, 6
telling you about
quads
their
and
naps at work for
yeah, 6 quads and 2 skidoos, and the
They're
farmer
side by
lifestyle.
side, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
"Alright,
a little
cool."
different
Yeah.
world up here, but
Yeah.
we were a 2-teacher family the whole time,
Yeah.
and our kids saw their friends have probably way more than they
Yeah.
did at times, but they weren't wanting for anything either,
Yeah.
though. And
Yeah.
so I mean,
I don't find like I know.
I think if
like,
you're in teaching for the money, you are going to burn out fast.
And so I've had this conversation a few times where I've had very different answers of should you be paid for extracurriculars? Because I get like a 50-50 split on people who are like, no,
That's
it
a very
should
American thing, right? They
be-
pay their coaches.
but sometimes they pay their coaches only to coach, like not
Yes.
even to
Yeah,
teach.
Some of the teachers I've known who've taught up here as well, they it was like you get $20,000 more to coach the football team or something like that on top of their salary.
Here?
No, this was in the States. They
Okay,
worked in
yes.
the States
Yeah.
and stuff. So interesting. I don't know where I come at it from that, because I mean, I'm somebody who gave up a ton of time
Yeah.
in my career, and that's what some of the best memories I have. And the people who stay closest to me, former students who are closest to me, are the ones who I did the dub or played the floor hockey or
Well,
coached
because
some
I totally
volleyball.
understand both sides, obviously.
Yeah, me
because,
too.
Well, in one way, I almost find if you get paid to do all that extra stuff, it kind of dilutes your like people will be like, oh, well, he's just doing that because
money as opposed
yeah,
to
he's
passion.
just getting the extra
Yeah.
versus
Yeah,
also there's a certain recognition that if you're giving up like hundreds of hours of your time,
yeah.
again,
Such a
like should there be
catch-22.
like,
yeah, I don't
is
know.
it money? Is it days in lieu? Like, is like, what does that look
Yeah.
like? Do you think what?
And the other thing too is now dig into that a little bit too. Those kind of things have to be in your contracts. So
Yeah.
here's a little HR for you.
Yeah.
You can't negotiate outside of that.
Yeah.
It's actually against the laws. You have whatever's in the contract is what it is. We can't negotiate outside of that. So that would have to be negotiated by the local or by the provincial, because a lot of our contract now is done provincially, right?
Yes.
For ATA.
Yeah.
And so unless it's in there,
yeah,
that wouldn't be a no go immediately. So I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer to that, because I agree with you. I see the time put in by people doing plays, by people doing like it's a ton. And
and so this is my maybe qualm is the wrong word, but maybe 20 years from now, I'm in like maybe some different position and there's a major teacher shortage. The tipping point has occurred. Yeah. Like, what are the
maybe
kind of
something that can bring them? Could
but is the coaching incentive or like in some sort of ways to?
I think you'd have less of the quiet quitting.
People. So what's
if people were, you've heard of that, right?
Well, I've heard of quiet quitting, but what does it mean?
Well, I think people would still be participating a bit more if they felt their time was valued.
Yeah.
And listen, as an administrator, I valued all their times. I made sure that I was at the games. That's another part of being at the games. This is by administrator. I'm showing that I'm supporting you for your time, and then making sure that there's other gifts for them and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, these are all things within the value of the day you need to do. But I don't know. I don't know if there's an answer to that. I see both sides of it as well. Yeah, I really do. I mean, you're coaching a senior team at a high school. It is massive. It's like 4 or 5 days a week, plus 4 weekends, 4 to 6 weekends.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a family, that's considerable. That's not nothing.
No, and that's
and I did it. Like I lived that life, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the answer to that one is. Because you said, if it's your passion, you don't care. Like, you're going to do it anyways, right? You might grumble about it a little, but you'd still do it. Yeah. And it was something that I love, and still to this day, probably the biggest part I miss of being in the schools is that coaching piece, because you get to know kids outside of it.
So do you think that, like, are you able to still coach, like being like a director?
Sure you could. Yeah, sure you could.
And so, like, do you think? So
do I have the time? That's the kicker now.
So so I guess now that your kids are like off to university, what is kind of
filling that time? Because I was going a lot with that. So a lot of that's getting back to being like your own personal growth now, right? So now the job takes longer. My days are a little longer because, and there's more night meetings once you move to district office. There's more of that nighttime meeting stuff. But I've been able to refocus back onto myself a little bit with running and you did
the 10K. I saw that.
I did. Yeah. I was on the fence of doing the half next year. We'll do it next year. I'll get there. It was a lot. Yeah. I just got to change my pace. I was running, I ran the 10K in.
I don't run fast.
58:20.
Oh, that's solid though.
Yeah. You bring an hour to me. Anybody can be an hour in a 10K is good. I can't run that fast for 21 though. I got to dial that down. So now, even today, I went for a run today, and I've been working on going slower, longer.
Yep.
Right, and that's the key. So, anyways, there's a bit of shift to that, and picked up the guitar again, and stuff like that. So just more karate and training a bit more. I went to 4th Dan within the last year, so redoing some of my own stuff and doing that. And still, listen, your kids go off to university, but they're still a big part of your life. Like,
I know. I'm
still doing tons.
The immediate time, like you're not really. As like the evenings, I guess, are kind of.
And then now I'm going to like all schools sports. Like I'm trying to pop into everyone's stuff. As opposed to one school's, right? I'm definitely not just representing one school anymore. I'm trying to go and show that district office sees what you're doing, and this is important. Division office is important, stuff. It's
And you're gonna play in the Grad Cup again this year.
What's that?
You're gonna play in the Grad Cup again.
Well, if I'm asked, I will. Of course, I will. Why not? Yeah, I'm a plugger out there. I'm 4th line plug. I'm good for that.
Same with you, so
that's right. Yeah, I got traded for an NHL player last year.
You did.
Who else would say that? But so I think it's just important being a part of those kind of things at all schools, because like in my day of watching new teachers, I can go from and I love every bit of this. I will go and play at the water table in ECTV class with kids and love every second of it. And that afternoon I'm in a physics 30 class. Love that too. Love everything. Love it all.
So you definitely strike me as still, after 27 years, a very positive outlook on the job, what it entails, etc., which one of the kind of biggest surprises, especially while subbing, was how often people would say, don't do this job. It's awful.
Sad, eh?
There's But there's just so much.
What are you doing here? Choose do something else. Like go work at plants, drive
and
a
there's
truck.
so much negativity, and
Yeah.
I find
It can pull you down.
how it does. And
Yeah.
how did you kind of combat that? Because like, how do you maintain that perspective?
I definitely, when I was a teacher, I just didn't spend time around that. I didn't give that person the time of day. I didn't have time for that. And there was some of it
so easy to get sucked into it, and it's just, I find you feel shittier.
Yeah,
after you
100% will. That is exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, I think too. I'm just, you know what, and I think of a few pretty strong ones that I know of, and they can really pull you down. And you need to just either call them on it. And as I went into leadership, that became part of my job, was doing that. Yeah. So I would explain to them how they were making others feel. I would rarely talk about me, but talk about others. Like, I mean, do you realize this is what people have come and told me the way they feel when they're around you? And they would say, no, that's not true, or whatever they would say. I'm like, well, I'm just being frank with you, what was said to me. And so I'm telling you it, because I know that's not what you want to do. You don't come in this building thinking you want to do that. So as a leader, I got to make that hard conversation. And that's probably the hardest part of being a leader, is those fierce conversations. Those are tough. Those are tough conversations. And it is avoided by even people in those roles at times. And I think that's a skill you need to develop. And that's done by having some of them with parents and kids through the years. And you chip away at getting better. Like, that's never going to be comfortable. But
you kind of are able to better prepare for the discomfort, I guess.
The discomfort. I'm a fan of discomfort. I love sitting in discomfort. As I've gotten more experienced or older, whatever term you want to use, I love it. I love when they say the world, like we're at a conference and somebody's like, okay, we're going to role play something. I like just enjoy the energy around me of people being like, I want to die. This role play is happening. And I am just like, yes, get me on stage. I will do whatever you want me to do. I just love that feeling. And it's the same when I started learning about unconscious bias and white privilege. And you just sit in that and marinate in how much you've got in life, because it's just what you look like. And that's okay. That's where you're really going to learn. Now I'm learning. Now
you learn to grapple with it.
Yes, I want to grapple with it.
Rather than like passively.
No, and then when I sit and meditate and you sit and... That's why a lot of people struggle with meditation. Who's the worst person that people don't want to be with? Themselves. You are with yourself.
Your worst enemy can be yourself.
That's all you got. So you either going to pick apart your day, or you're going to learn to be like, well, I can't change that. So how can I do better next? So I just really love uncomfort. So that helped me with that. I mean, those moments. And actually being in HR, you deal with a lot of uncomfortable. So I mean, it definitely helps. And it's exhausting though. I will say that. And that part of it I see, but I think you need to find how you can turn it on and off. And that is different for everyone. And I found my way through, exercise and stuff like that. And Star Wars or whatever it is, whatever your thing is.
Well, you find a channel.
Yeah, like an outlet, I guess. Yeah, and my family and playing guitar. I love music. I love music. I play saxophone. I still come to jazz band.
The jazz.
I was at Westwood's jazz band last week too. And so I just love that part of it. Like keeping all those different parts of you. Don't be one thing. Don't just be the principal of McTavish. Don't just be the director of HR. Don't just be somebody who's giving back and what you're doing. And these are the things too. And people always say, well, when I'm going recruiting, now I'm here like for McMurray. Like, listen, it is what you put into it. I said that the year I moved here. It is what you put into it. If you want to
1,000% agree.
Find the drugs in camp, whatever you want to do, you'll find that. That's what you'll find. If you
want to find the negative stuff anywhere, especially
anywhere. And I took it upon myself to say, no, I'm going to start a karate club. And 26 years later, I still have it. I've never charged a cent for it. It's free. Just come out, work out. You put into your community, you get out of your community, right? So I'm a big proponent of that too. But you need to find that. And that's, I think, where some of these people are struggling. They get too focused on how negative their day is, which it can be. Super negative days at school, 100%. I'm not debating that.
Did you ever have like low points in your career, like certain years that stick out? If you don't mind me asking, like how did you kind of?
Well, COVID was brutal.
Pardon?
COVID was brutal.
So what was that like?
Teaching at home and like just even organizing that, and that was. You talk about building a plane as it's in the air, like that was it. That was brutal. That just because what I love about schools.
That's an insane expression.
What I love about schools is that camaraderie and time together. You've never seen.
I've never heard building a plane while it's in the air.
Video. That's a classic leadership video. The guys out in the wing building the plane. Anyway, I think we were all so separated, which is what I love about school is that time together, and then so finding the light was way tougher.
And so that gives you energy. It's like
Yeah,
being in
so
the
it gets you-
being in the
coming to
buzz,
the
right?
empty building, because I was like myself and maybe one or two other people continually came,
Yeah.
and it was weird. It was this is a building. It's a school when there's kids in it. It's a building without it, and there's a difference. And
That's
so
that's a good way of putting it.
the little things that we did, like Thomas Andrews, now principal at a school,
Oh yeah.
Walter Glasgow.
So I actually think I cut him off in traffic the other day.
Love it. Probably deserved it. I know how he drives.
I
Shout out
think he
Thomas.
knew it was me because I remember I looked back and he was wagging his finger.
Yeah. That'd be him. That would definitely be him. So during COVID, we took it upon ourselves that when it was a kid's birthday,
Okay.
we would still show up at their house with a card and a lanyard from McTavish.
Just finding ways, yeah.
Yeah. So like I rode my bike everywhere during that time because why not? Like we didn't even have a car.
Why not?
So I rode around all of this area dropping things off, and Thomas would drop them off, and we just took it upon ourselves to say, that's how we're going to keep these kids connected. And just the look on kids' faces. Remember, we weren't allowed to go into people's houses.
No.
Like we would just knock and like run away. Right? It was like, and then they'd find this thing, and just that positivity, things like that. So you got to find it. Like that was us seeking it out. Yes. Like, could we have gone home every day and been like, this is the worst job in the world?
Yeah.
We sure could have.
But you found a way.
Yeah, and I think that's what keeps people moving forward, is finding what your thing is. And a lot of times I think, unfortunately, especially teachers take things off their plate. They're like, my plate is too full. And they take something off and they don't realize that was the thing that really on the whole plate that was fulfilling them. And they've now still got all the things they don't like. But the one thing
now
they
it's all
did
just
like,
junk food. You didn't have that one.
The one thing they
piece
did like is now
yeah.
gone. So I'm always a little wary when people come to me and say, I'm never going to do that again. Well, you know, take a look at your whole plate. Now, as you said earlier, some of this stuff is so much easier just to say, and it's way harder to do. Yeah. So that's another part of it.
Well, too. I guess it's how do you try to, when and where do you attempt to instill that value if you don't have it? Because I think it's one thing to recruit teachers who have graduated, but it's another to kind of inspire the next quote unquote generation, being very like philosophical here of, how do you make sure people want to still do it? Because I almost find there's a lack of value of community anyway. Yeah. Because I remember, so Fort McMurray, again, for all its faults, I have found, one, living in Calgary for 5 years, the trail system here is second to none.
Love it.
You got to go to Banff where everything is super packed.
Yep.
And I honestly don't like Banff. Yeah. It's so busy.
It's very commercial.
Here, you go 5 minutes. You're in like this massive trail network. Yeah. And so again, if you're not really into biking or running, you would lose maybe that's different. Yeah. But Fort McMurray, I guess growing up here, you're isolated. So everyone is kind of in the same boat.
We're on the same boat.
Two, I also grew up going to church. So you kind of had that community as well too. Sure. And I find, and maybe it's because I'm in the school still, but I find this city specifically to be so much more community oriented than people think it is, that I've never understood the bad rap. Like I've
been on planes for 20 years telling people that's not the way it is.
I'm like, it's really just not a bad
We love it up here.
place.
We raised both our kids here, and I would do it any other way. It was a great place for us, and it's been very good to me for my career. And once again, what you put in is what you get out. And if you put in nothing, you're going to leave in 2 years because you got nothing out of it. So we put lots in. Well, 27 years you're here, sit and talk to a former student as he's starting his career, right? So, I mean... After
my grade 9 Hunger Games punishment from you. I think that was my only run-in with you.
How dare you throw something outside the bus?
Those
How dare
Skittles,
you?
They needed...
that was the right turn in your life right there. If I had not interjected, God knows where you'd be right now.
That grade 9 homeroom.
Imagine taking all the grade 9s out of that now, all 300 of them. It would be impossible. We don't even do it anymore.
Well, and so... in the next, I haven't really kicked the tires on this yet, but like Napoleon, the movie comes out here in November, so I would love to get the 20s down to the theater.
Those are memories.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, well, I have one more question. To ask you, Mr. Barr. Yeah. So we've kind of touched on this avenue a bit so far, but I heard a quote once, big quote guy. Education is what remains once you forget everything that you learned in school. So what are the kind of values or takeaways that you hope your students take from you beyond curriculum?
I think number one, that everybody has worth. That what you're seeing isn't always the whole story. Like really delve into why people are the way they are. And I think that always remember that there's worth to everyone. That would be one. Two, there's nothing that is beneath you. One of the biggest comments I got I always told kids in the hallway, if there's one thing you learned from me in the whole time here. So I'd be out there and there'd be spill on the ground and I'd be mopping it up. And the kids would be like, what are you doing that for? And I was always said to them, if there's one thing you learned from me, don't ask anyone to do anything that you weren't willing to do yourself. And that, to me, I was like, if every kid left here knowing that was the only lesson, well, that's a pretty good lesson. Yeah. So those two things.
It's like a humility.
Yeah. And an open heart. I think like that open heart of giving everyone a chance. And then I think now that I've kind of studied a little longer and know thing, I think really understanding the privilege you have, many of our students, and including myself, have because of what we may look like. And I think that is something that I didn't hear a lot about in my schooling, or even when I got to teach social studies, that I think would be a much bigger part of what I would do. And at this school, we had Project Cambodia, where we were building schools in Cambodia. And I think those are the things that we need to do more of, that we don't realize. We sit in this room with, it's, $30,000 wall here next to us. And, for $10,000, we can build an entire school for 190 kids who have never been in school. $10,000. So less than a coat of paint for this wall. You can build a school there for kids who have never been to school.
Wow. I never realized that either.
So, and so the school has built 4. We built 4 of those. So, and we know when we educate a girl, that's the change in the world needs. Educate a girl. Because then she will educate her children. Yeah. Right? That's the real change. Now you talk about, why do you do your things you do? That gives me chills. Even just thinking of that. Like, so that's, you talk about things you're most proud of in your career. That's one of the things I'm definitely going to be up there, is the work we've done there. And we did it in Kenya when I was at Westwood.
So I was actually talking to Kelly Haldane the other day about when she taught in Kenya. Yeah. And was telling me about, like, they had 54 students in a grade 3 classroom with 1 textbook.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So privilege. The privilege we have, right? So I think instilling in kids the privilege we have.
Why do you think that's so hard to recognize?
Well, first of all, being white is number one. It's just built in. The entire society has been built for us in this country to make us at the top. Yeah, and but we need to realize that
every student in this building has access to this mega facility.
Yes.
And I find for the most part, it's just taken for granted.
100%. And I think that's our society.
I guess
there's a bigger issue than just what we're going to capitalize on here at the school. But I think we can open people's eyes to what we have and to what others have. Consistently showing what schools look like around the world, and that, the 35 to 40 we're getting in classes here seem ridiculous, and is 53 in 1 textbook. This is a totally different world too. We can't even imagine that. That's even 10 times worse. But why is that okay? Well, there's one big difference between those students and our students. Yeah. And it happens to be 0.001% of their genetic code. Right? And it's just the color of their skin, but it makes it okay. Yeah. These are things, there's the uncomfort.
Sit in that. Seriously.
Sit in that and enjoy it. And realize we got to make change. We got to change things.
And I find, if anything, maybe with the social media algorithm, that's a generalization, obviously, but it's so much easier to maintain ignorance.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Idiocracy movie, which is just terrible movie. But it was basically how social media directed people into this kind of lethargic state of watching ridiculous videos that are made for them. Yeah, and just it drives you towards that. So I know that's for sure that, and then just that you help be a part of growing something that was unique and as opening a new school, and that's certainly was a team thing, and but it was a joy to be a part of too. So, and now being at district division office, I get a chance to kind of visit all the schools and try to help and support those schools in doing amazing things all around within our community, in their schools, in their classes, leader, and all these things that are just amazing that we can do in our schools. And seeing how they're spreading the light, and then maybe just add 2 cents here or there at each of the schools, and that's that influence you hope to have. And then plus with your hiring, and so that's the look now. And if you want, I can't think of a better legacy than to run into kids when they're older and doing their jobs that they've done. And I can't tell you how many times my wife and I run into people at West Edmonton Mall that are there with their kids, and they'll come running up to us, and it's either Mrs. Barr, because she has been teaching for a long time, or it's Mr. Barr, and these people are 35 and have kids, and they talk about something, and it's rarely a lesson. It's just, you really, oh, you were so cool, or but in the end, it got down to it being, You were just there for them when they needed it. And what else would you want in your career than that? I mean, did I want great results in my math? Yeah. But am I happier now that 25 years later, kids will still come up to me and stuff like that? I think that's good. And I will say, and this is me as being the person who looks at everything from all the points of views. I mean, I also had my kids had to live through that too, though. Like their dad and mom were people who were, we couldn't go anywhere without somebody. We went to a trip in Mexico one time and ran into kids from the school there.
Yeah,
so there was just no
the amount of
escape.
You can't go outside without.
No, there was no escape for them, and both of them are amazing humans, and they were extremely good athletes. But there was always, my son for 6 years here, there was always that aura around him of like, was he getting it? Because no, he was just a good athlete. He got what he got because he earned it. But they had to live through that part of it too, right? So, and my daughter told me one time, she said it was harder having you be liked by everyone than if you were hated. She said, because we'd be at the table and you come over and make some joke about somebody's lunch or take part of their food and walk away, and they'd all be like, man, why isn't my dad that cool? And they're like, she looked at him like, my dad's not cool. He's an idiot. Like, what are you talking about?
He just took your food.
Yeah. He's like, what are you talking? So like, there's those pieces of it too, though. But in the end, I think you got to find, like, to circle back to the whole thing about recharging, and you got to find what recharges you. And for me, those time with the kids and spending time with kids who really needed it was what recharged me. And that's what, if somebody's looking for what can I do, find that one kid in your class who needs you right now. There's every single class you have has a kid who needs you desperately right now.
Because I find there is almost, like, even from my experience so far, your to-do list is it's always full. Never ending. So it's, I guess maybe like the awareness of the meditation, maybe practice almost makes it think like, what's the kind of major blind spot that I'm ignoring right now? Yeah. Of what on here can wait to maybe be a bit more present with this right now.
And that's a little of experience. Right? You learn a little bit of that through experience, because there are deadlines. Listen, I've got tons of deadlines I got to meet. I mean, I'm not going to like, I'm not doing that. No, you still have to do deadlines. But I mean, it's being responsible with it and knowing what is due and what isn't, and how you can spend your time, because we all waste time flipping through TikTok or whatever it is you're doing, and whatever your thing is, it's just mindless, which we need to. Yes. Not saying that that's not a good thing or for a little bit, but there's plenty you can do that, that shifts your time a little bit more. And I think in the end, also not be against focusing on yourself and your own development a little bit, but that takes time. Like that's like, I get up at 10 to 6 in the morning and run, and I don't have to do that. And would I rather sleep some mornings? Yes. But I still get up, and whether or not it's 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever I do that morning, it's what I do. And I know that my day is going to be better because of it, and play a little guitar or do a puzzle, whatever.
Like when you run in the morning, do you kind of just go off of how your body feels that day? Is that kind of or do you have a set routine? Because I pretty much go on, like, if my body feels banged up, I'll slow down. I even just walk sometimes, or I'll usually run.
Yeah. Like as I'm getting closer to, like when I want to train for something, like I'll do like a 5K repeatedly, trying to get better and better and better. Yeah. But as I get closer to the 10K or whatever it is I'm running, then I'll adjust to like, today's a sprint day or today's whatever day. Okay. I try to do some more of that. I'm trying to get better at the longer, shorter run so that I'm never out of breath. I don't wear a watch that tells me my heart rate. I simply go the way my body feels. That's it. I don't have any I do have a thing on my phone that tells me how fast I'm going per kilometer, but it's not measuring my heart rate or anything. So now, I think I try to, as I've gotten older, I definitely need to listen to my body more. I find that at karate as well. I can't do what I used to be able to do. But it doesn't mean you can't do what you need to do. It's just you got to listen to it a bit better. So you definitely adjust for what you can do. And there are some mornings I drag myself out and it's 3K and I'm like, that is plenty. That is enough, and I'm done. And
that is plenty.
I'll come home and stretch for 10 minutes longer because I'm old and I need to stretch. So the true old man walk. But I think that's a big part of it too, is having that release of whatever that is for you. Maybe it's shiniaki, maybe it's whatever it is for you. Everybody's got their thing. Crocheting. It doesn't matter what it is.
Well, have an escape, like you said, like the Star Wars thing. Star Wars, There's nothing wrong with taking that escape. Ever.
Yeah, for sure. No, and just enjoy it. Like, enjoy the run. Like, it's going to be over faster than you know it too. I mean,
how fast has it gone by?
Unbelievably fast.
Like, does it feel?
Yeah,
like just yesterday fast. You were
no question. Like
grade 9 disciplining for the Hunger Games.
Walking into Dickensfield, even before that, into that first year Dickensfield. And I know that out of that class, I'm still friends with people in that class now, from my very first year teaching, and they are 40 now. So my joke is that they're always catching me,
Wow.
right? That they're catching my age. So I was like 22 when I taught them. So I was very young when I taught them. And I remember that day walking in that classroom vividly to Call of the Wild I was teaching. You wouldn't forget it. And you remember your first few classes, I will say, way more than the rest of it.
Yeah.
They just stick with you. And so, yeah, I've stayed friends. I've been to many of their weddings. I've been to, it's...
and that's kind of what it's about. Because I find the way I love that every time I see a student in public, it's always a positive interaction.
Correct.
And I find that's what I feed off of.
Perfect.
Is that
great.
Positive, they're happy to see you.
So that's telling you, if you want to know what that's telling you, it's telling you that you're there for them. It has nothing to do with the lesson you taught them. It's to say that it might, but the odds are it's because they felt that you have been there for them one way or another. And
so one of the students I had last semester, I thought it was really funny because I remember they said, like, Clark, I don't remember anything from your class. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I was like, that's fine.
Your life's going to continue on.
Yes, 30-2 social, whatever.
Yeah.
Then I asked them, I was like, how did you do in your diploma?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got an 80.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I was like, well, so then clearly you didn't.
At least for that day you held on to it.
You know what? For me, if like, again, that's an 80 on a 30-2 diploma is a solid grade for anyone.
Great grade.
And for me to be like, if you could still accomplish that, and you still felt because you didn't feel like you were learning. Yeah, that's the part where that's where I'm like, that's the channel I want to stay on, right?
Yeah, it's just happening because we're going together through this journey.
If I don't think I almost find now I don't know how kids are different because everyone has been saying, oh, teaching used to be so different, but this is my normal. Yeah, and every new teacher now, I don't know how it used to be, but I find you have to make every single effort to make learning feel informal.
Yes.
I don't know, for whatever reason.
Distract them into it.
Well, I almost find maybe before you had kids who were more academically driven. Not that they're not now, but it's almost like, no, we need to change this up. You can't just sit there and talk to me for 90 minutes and I'm going to listen. That has been
it's definitely shifted. I agree with you totally there. And but that's just it. I mean, and nothing to listen, don't get me wrong. I've run into kids who I would have said hated me, like that I've had to deal with consistently. And they're, I remember one time we were out for dinner at Earl's with my family, and this guy came over the table and said, Mr. Barr. I looked up and I kind of recognized him, and it was definitely a kid I used to shake down. He was dealing at the school back in my vice principal days. And he's like, man, I was really not a great human when you knew me, and yet you still treated me with respect, as much as I deserved, he said. Yeah. And he shook my hand and we finished eating and whatever, and he paid for our dinner before we left.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and he just was coming out to apologize. But like he now was 24, 25. And so your youth has disappeared, and you realize maybe you were making some choices that weren't great. But he just was like, you just never made me feel like it was over for me. You definitely made me feel like I was doing something wrong. But I never felt like I was over. It was like you were giving up on me. So that's high praise from a kid I thought would have stabbed me in the back with a knife in that moment, but no, he went a different route, and so that's good. It is also equally sad when you see some of them take a path that you wish they didn't.
Yeah, and I haven't been in it long enough, and
it does happen. I mean, you do your best, and sometimes the demons are just a bit too much to pull them out, and you can do your best, and that's probably the toughest thing. I've been to 13 funerals of students. Yeah. It's a tough situation. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess not that there is any way to help someone prepare for that, but like, and obviously I'm not trying to, this is purely, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? A hypothetical.
Yeah.
Of like, how do you handle those emotions when a former student passes?
I think once again, you're going to be present, because there's other kids that are going to see you there, and you're there for them at that point. You're not there for and for yourself to say goodbye. You need that closure and stuff like that. And these were many times these were kids I knew down the path that was not the greatest. Other times it wasn't. It was kids that just took a left turn after school, and we know what life's like. I mean, like I said, it gets back to being a microcosm society, and that's probably thousands, of kids I've taught, 13. Probably more than that I don't even know of. There's just ones I know that stayed in town, and so I got to attend their funerals and see their friends and say goodbye. And I don't think there's a way to prepare for that. There's definitely no way to prepare for that.
Yeah.
No, that's just that's a life. We're all working through that whatever ways we can. And those of us that have lost family members know what that's like. And so to me, these were my kids. And so it was like losing a piece of me when that happened. And no matter how lost
I know
they
it
were,
seems like inevitable. Like it probably, hopefully,
Sure.
obviously not, but
yeah.
you never 13 and 27 years. I mean, that's 1 every 2 years. Like,
Yeah,
you know
which
what
is
I mean?
a lot.
That's a crazy.
Which is a lot. Yeah, and
Yeah,
unfortunately, many of them drug related. So
yeah. So don't go to Scott Barr schools.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but in the end, the majority, like I said, I run into kids all the time, and it's positive for the most part. And I still, when I come back to here, even when I go to Westwood, because I still recognize some of those kids from my days of working there, or days of just being in the hallways. You know, hey, you were the principal McTavish. And,
is it weird not being here anymore? Like how long did that kind of take to adjust?
Yeah, like
away
it's definitely
from...
I mean, change is good for everyone, right? It's good for the building and it's good for me, and so it was time. Like 10.5 years is a long time.
So what do you mean by like? So actually,
I think we all
need
to adjust and grow. We all need to grow. And I think the building needed to grow in a different way. I mean, that's the nature of schools. Like,
did you have a moment that you felt like it's
No.
time for a change?
No. I think like I knew, like I knew after 10 years. It was time. It was time for someone else to take the reins and give it. It
seems like no matter how good anyone is, like a healthy term.
Yeah,
10
it's
years,
a long one. That's pretty long for a school, actually. I'd say 5 is probably normal, but 10.
I guess where you were brand new too.
The thing too is you got to remember this job split into 2. So like there was as a junior high, and then there was as a high school. So really, the job changed 7 years in to a totally different job.
How do you manage that like transition from like a leadership perspective? Like
when you're was it high school and
like was it more
my goal was to bring the same feeling we had into the high school.
Was it more challenging than you thought, or was it pretty much?
Most of the kids moved up with the system, so they were just a part. So like, remember we had 9
and grad class we had like 30 students,
32 students who chose to come back. Right, remember those 32 kids could have graduated somewhere else. They chose to come here.
Okay, they
chose because this was their home.
Okay,
right, they felt home here. So that was super meaningful. Yes, it was during COVID, and so and so those 32 came back, but I think we just kept that feeling of the family. And I remember one year we did a video at the start of the year. It was called Leave a Legacy, and I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I think I saw it. Yeah,
it is. I cannot watch that without getting teary-eyed. I'm extremely emotional human as well, as much as I hide that at work. I'm very emotional about stuff like that. Every time I watch that video, I'm like, this is what it's about.
Like a sentimental.
This is it. This is what it's about. This is what it was. This was Leave a Legacy, and it's talking to the kids about this is your year, and just like every day is going to be tough. There's days that are going to be tough, and days are going to be good, and
you're almost trying to like instill a direction.
Yeah.
Like, what are you? Yeah. Because honestly, I think most kids probably don't think about that.
Yeah.
Like no kid thinks about like, what am I gonna? What's my legacy gonna be? They're like,
their frontal lobe's not even developed to think of that.
I got 2 more years.
That's right. Yeah, 2 more years till yours is done. But so I think that's a piece of it too. But I definitely miss certain aspects. Of course, I miss being in classroom teaching too. Mm-hmm. So I think if you didn't, you're in the wrong profession, stuff like that, right? But this will always feel like a piece of me. There's a piece of me in this building. I don't think that's never going to change. Yeah. That's for sure. I mean, and I was part of naming the school. I was part of drawing the school on the paper. I was part of drawing the high school. Those are that you don't leave that. Having said that, though, it's important for me too to try to now take what I learned here and spread it amongst other schools if I'm at all possible and lucky enough to do it. So,
how did you decide on Marauders? Like, where did McTavish and Marauders come from?
Knowing what you just heard from the last hour, whatever we've been talking, I would hope you summarized that I actually got it from the kids. I went to the schools and talked to the students. They picked the school colors. They picked the names.
I think I actually remember that.
Yes.
I think I remember that survey.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whoa! I just triggered something.
Yeah. So I didn't do it. It was the kids. The students did it, as it should have been. Yeah. It's their home, not mine. Well, it is mine eventually, but it was going to be theirs for sure. Yeah. But so that was it. And the design, of course, we went to a graphic designer for the design of the logo. But the name and actually the school colors as well, were picked by the students. The number 2 choice was yellow and gold. Can you imagine that? We'd both been yellow and gold next to Trinity.
What were the alternatives for names?
Monarchs was another one.
Okay.
Yeah, it was another one. Marauders, Monarchs, Scots.
Scots?
Yeah, like
that would have been hilarious.
I would have been, and that's why I was glad that did not win. because that would have been brutal. But yeah, like because of the McTavish name, like it was like the Scottish type feel to it. SCOT.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It actually used quite a bit. So
Yeah.
those are the three that were the final three.
Okay.
And then there was two combinations of blue and white and green, and then one of the yellow one. Oh, you know what the third one was? Lakers colors.
That
Yellow
would
and
have been kind
purple.
of cool.
Yellow
That
and
would have
purple.
been kind of
'Cause it was
sick.
very different. That was the other one. Yeah, Andrews wanted that one.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but that was the other one. So yeah, but that was all through the students. Yeah, it was through them,
Right on.
and then we just worked in that first year to create that culture that we wanted, and everywhere from the play in the first year of Beauty and the Beast to establishing us as a musical theater school to over 100 city championships in the junior highs when it was just junior high.
So, I was actually sorry. I'm gonna keep going on here. I have one more thing. Actually,
yeah, no worries. My wife always says, "Don't give me a microphone, because I'll talk forever."
No, please.
Yeah.
Because right now, again, kind of in my small scale analysis of all the schools, it's kind of each school in here kind of has their lane.
Yeah.
But McTavish seems to be most of the melting pot. Like Merck's kind of the trades.
Yeah.
Comp is like a special ed program and a special education, right? It's still what it's called. Am I wrong?
That works. Yeah.
Yes,
it's program school. Yeah. Program school. But there's all learners there.
No,
but
it's almost maybe not
our
formal
definition. Our
definition.
divisions programming is there for those grades.
Yes. Yeah. And so even with Garbuio, I asked him special education. He said yes.
Yeah.
So and then like Westwood's kind of more the academic school ish.
The AP for sure is there.
It has the
AP program for sure. Yeah.
But I guess we're trying to distinguish like what is the McTavish lane, or is it we don't have one?
Do you want my answer to that?
Sure. Yeah.
My answer to that, I didn't want a lane.
Well, I kind of like having
Why
no
couldn't we
lane.
be Why couldn't you be in the play and also play on the sports team? Why can't you do that? That was my official answer. That's French and Peak is here. Is at McTavish.
Yeah.
So
I love
having
that.
said that, let me make it very clear to you. There are AP students at Comp. There are AP students at
and I
Westwood.
did
There are
not
AP
mean at
students
all
McTavish.
to like.
There are AP
say-
students at Frank's Braggins.
Yes.
Every school has every type of learner.
Yes.
So I don't want to say anyway.
No.
There are programs that the division decides are based out of a school, but every one of those schools offers every single one of these things.
Yes.
I mean, like I said, I was a jazz band at Westwood. I've been jazz band here. I'll go to the band at Comp. So like every school has a little bit of it. But as the leader of this building, my goal was to have all of those programs in some way or another.
Yeah, because I remember even there was like kids winning these prestigious $100,000 scholarships and all this crazy stuff. And you also had the Peak program. So it was never not in a box. Kind of like what you're saying with the students.
And see, that gets back to what I needed. I didn't fit into the box. And so I was like, why am I going to try to make... That was the culture I wanted here. I wanted to be everything to everyone. And that was insane to believe, I think. Yeah. But it was my goal is to develop the musical theater to the highest level we can, develop the robotics to the highest level we can when it was here, develop the sports to the highest level we can, develop the art program to get the people with the passion in front of in those areas. And then that was, then kids can truly, we've had kids turn down Harvard from this school. We've had kids going to Stanford. Like I can go on, Lauren scholarships, like that school, that kind of, it did pay off in the end. Having said that, now that I get to travel to all the schools, I'm seeing every school has that. Yeah. And that's amazing. Boy, that lights my fire. Yeah. I go into Westwood and see the kids caring about their athletics. Yeah. So all you hear about is academic and AP. No, the school's amazing. They've got a bit of everything there. Comp has some of the most polite, amazing kids down there who are going to be going on to be doctors.
Well, yeah, actually,
so I just love that. I love that now I get to see that every school is doing it in their own way. Yeah. Do they have something as the front with the flag? Yes. But behind that, it's happening at all the schools. And that's what I love about the chances kids have no matter where they live. Comp is one of
my favorite schools.
Love it. Love visiting there. Yeah. So awesome there. So yeah, I just think, and that gets back to that whole, unfortunately your reputation or the stereotype goes out, right? But no, I think every school has the chance to do that. That was definitely one of my goals coming in here to have that. And our schools as a staff, and I say mine, but whenever I use that term, I definitely mean it was a we. Our goal was to have every kid feel like they could do it. And even like for a while in the Peak program, we had something called, we had a group of kids who would want to be in a sport that didn't fit into Peak. It was Flex Academy. Okay. And so kids like that were gymnasts and swimmers and skiers, stuff that didn't fit into the peak program because we weren't kind of a coach for all those things. Why couldn't we make their schedule flexible so they could go do that stuff with their coach but still be at school for most of the time? Much like the big schools in Calgary and Edmonton do.
Yeah.
So we instituted that. So their phys ed and stuff would be in the first block of the day.
Yeah.
And so if a kid swam at 5 a.m, they could go home and have a good breakfast and shower and then come to school for 10 o'clock. Or if they're in dance or gymnastics and need to leave at 2, their phys ed and options were at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's no reason you can't be an honor student and an Olympian. Why can't you be that?
No.
Or in the play. Like, I just don't see that as
well, yeah,
limiting factors. So.
I also like because if you identify yourself, you're limiting yourself.
Yep.
So limiting that expansion is like, I would say antithetical to like what you're trying to instill anyway, no matter who you are in a school. It's not what you should be promoting. It's like, you should be one thing and never try anything new.
And if you want to circle back to the power of a teacher.
Yeah.
When I was in grade 2, 3, I had the same teacher as my brother, who's 2 years ahead of me. He's a genius, like photograph memory type of genius.
Okay.
I was not. I was extremely messy writing, could not spell.
Yeah.
And this teacher kept me in for recess in 2, 3 and told me I was not going to graduate high school. Yeah. It was the only time I remember my dad going down to school to talk to a teacher. But that never left me. It's never left me. And so you want to talk about the power of a teacher?
It's the permanence of it.
Power of a teacher right there. And so I remember I graduated from U of A, went back to that school, saw her. And you know what her answer to me was? I was just driving you. And I said, I was 7. Like, was that really... I just know that that's not how you drive a kid anymore. That's not, you really motivate. Yeah, I'll never forget her. I won't even mention her name. I won't mention her name.
No.
But
I was 7.
I was 7. So I realized too, my underdeveloped mental frontal lobe, going back there and shoving that in her face was not a smart thing to do either. I didn't look at it from her point of view. Perhaps she had a horrible day. Perhaps she was.
Well, and I almost
don't understand. Like, I now look back, but if we want to go full circle, the power of the job we have. Is that a kid coming up to you to shake your hand at Earl's, or is that kid coming back to rub it in your face? Like, neither was what I did right. Absolutely not. Looking back, I would take it back. But I think it just goes to the power of the position we have and the worth we can make a kid feel or not feel for whatever reason, and why we have to walk a line at all times and understand the power that we have over these kids.
Well, and to exactly that point, I had a student last year who like hand wrote me the nicest note I've ever. It made me like tear up.
Of course, as it should have.
But the thing that they said, it like helped them shift everything. And I don't want to say anything about the note or anything. It's fine.
It's yours.
But it was because of one line that I wrote in a report card comment.
Yeah. Which I didn't even,
well, it's almost, you think, I guess when you have this vision of yourself as a teacher, it's going to be the powerful lecture that's going to change.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be
Opus Rex on there. You're up on the table.
Yeah. But it's more the informal, subtle things that I would never even thought twice about that.
Yep.
Then that's going to stick.
Yep.
But that can obviously be the negative side too.
Yeah, sure.
They might have just been having a bad day and then be like, frustrated, but you never forgot.
But she could have followed that up immediately with an apology and you know what I mean? Like, there's ways out
of
it. There's ways out of those moments.
Because
I've made mistakes. Definitely made mistakes.
And you can tell if you have some degree of emotional awareness. If you said something that's
the reaction you get.
Something.
Yeah.
Like and if you're not quick to kind of patch that up, then that's on you.
That's on
I
you.
would say.
Yes.
But that's not even a teacher student thing. That's just anyone having any conversation.
That's relationships.
That's just a skill. It is a skill, something that you kind of learn.
Yes.
But actually, so one thing I wanted to ask you too was about report card comments.
Yeah.
Do you think they still have a utility? Clearly, so this is kind of my thing. I had the conversation with someone where it was, now that parents have so much more access consistently to everything that's kind of going on, is it almost, should there have kind of been like an acceptance of the technology has changed? So maybe this is kind of obsolete, or is it more holding on to tradition? Like, what do you?
I think I've always thought that report cards should be split into two things. I think there should be the numeric mark. That's what you know of the curriculum. And the other one should be your work skills, which is really what is more important. Like, are you on, are you
And
coming?
that's like the written part. Is
Yeah,
that kind
not
of,
not that there's a mark to this part, because there shouldn't be. Because curriculum, your mark is based on the curriculum. Like, what do you know the curriculum? Period. That's what proper assessment is. It's not can you hand things in on time. It's not.
Yeah.
It's what do you know of this? Period.
Yeah.
And like it or not, that's just the truth.
Mm.
But we all know the soft skills we learn through school are what the ones that are going to really push us through life. Why aren't we commenting on? That's what should be commented on, not the 72. Like, they can look at that every single day in Power School. They can look at that. They have a question about it. Yeah, let me know. I'll tell you what they screwed up on the quiz or whatever assessment you were doing. And but to talk to a kid about the importance of, how do they work in a group? How do they share with others? Like, that's the stuff where the kid's going to grab more comments like they did for you, that underlined and stuck with them. Not necessarily about the 78 or 52 or. Yeah. In the end, there's not some bank of numbers here. We only have a certain number of 70s to give. Whatever, what kid earns is what kid earns. Like, it doesn't matter. And I think that's part of it too. Is like, I don't know. I think in a world where you can use ChatGPT to write your report card comments, is it really worthwhile then anymore? Like, I'm not so sure if that's the route to go. However, if you can write, and I'm talking like hand write something to a kid, that might be worth 10 times what you could write on that report card. And I have seen that in my own life I'm a fan of dropping off notes and treats that are specific to that person, of what they like and stuff like that. I can't tell you the number of classrooms I walk around and see, or offices now, because I do it, and I do it around the division now. Yeah. So like, this is that I see those up on the wall. This could be years ago. I put a tiny 2-sentence thing on their desk that's still on the wall in their classroom. The power of a word, like it's just being seen and stuff like that. So the same thing. So I think in the report card comment, I'll get back to that. You can make a kid be seen in that, or you can make them disappear.
And that was literally, as soon as I had that experience, I thought,
no, it's something.
That was an avenue that if that didn't exist, that wouldn't have happened. Yeah. Which is
So there you go.
Because I personalized that report card comment.
Yep. Listen, do I think you should use the sandwich method? Everyone in McTavish who's worked with me long enough knows the sandwich method. First one, what we all did. Second one, area of the curriculum you're talking about. Third one, how that kid's doing. But then the fourth one is this last part that I would add in, is that the part that really kind of goes with it is that personalized touch. Yeah. Right. I think that's important. More work. And that circles back to the whole burnout and.
Well, and so like, I guess maybe another thing is, maybe not in the teacher shortage realm, just kind of back to that, because I know a large chunk of teaching is marking, obviously.
Yeah.
And
without question.
But it's one of the main criticisms I always hear is that's an expected part of the job. It's because really we're only under contract for 32 hours a week. And again, and I'm not saying that to sound whatever, but is 12 hours, I guess, of planning and marking kind of instilled in your contract? Does that kind of make sense? Like, I
mean, I'm not going to get into the minutes of it, but because it is, some weeks you'll have none, and some weeks you'll have 10 times that.
Yes, and all I'm saying, I guess, is there a path one day to potentially have time that's designated for planning and marking?
Like, I mean, there's prep time in your schedule every year, which is not in every division. Remember that. That's not a guarantee. Like, that's just a past practice. Okay. Say that anywhere that you're supposed to, as long as you stay under the hours, minutes instruction. So talk to people teaching Edmonton Public now. They're teaching 8 for 8 in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Shorter classes. Obviously, they shave the time off. Mm-hmm. But I'm not condoning that either. I'm not saying that's the way it should go.
So they have shorter blocks, but no prep.
Shorter days. Oh. Because they can only work so many hours still, right?
Okay.
Anyways, I don't know. That whole gets back to that. Your job is to produce our job is to produce a number that, that the mark is what it is. And and you have to plan, you have to be ready for your classes. Yeah. So that has to me, I think there should be some prep time for that. Yeah. Because you have to do that. Yeah. We don't ask doctors to know how to do every surgery without giving them time to learn how to do something new. Yeah. So why would we do it different for professionals like teachers? Yeah. So I think that should always be there. And do I think it should be more? Yeah, that'd be another of those things that hopefully would fix the system a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. And obviously,
if we could get that even more, you don't think people would be better teachers? They had to prep every day to work on their other 3 classes in high school, or 5 or 6 in junior high or elementary, kindergartens, giving them more time. You for sure would be. Yeah. The system we have right now is not, and that's where that tipping point is. Yeah. How soon till we get to a point where we can the government, whoever it is in power, doesn't matter, sees the value in supporting their teachers in their healthy ways, as opposed to just, a number of kids in the classroom.
Yeah.
And right now we're not there.
All right,
man. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was
Thanks.
great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Good times.
Hey everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Just wanted to say again, if there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or have something you would like to contribute to the show, please do not hesitate to reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @MrClarkAfterDark. Hope you all enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you guys all next time. Unless you're scared.